Hi, everyone. Welcome to MEDENT Minutes, the podcast that explores EHR optimization and how practices can excel in value-based care. I'm Megan Chapman, the Director of Marketing and Communications here at MEDENT, and today I am joined by Patient360's COO, Amanda Lord, as we tackle the key takeaways from CMS's Final Rule. So, Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today.
Exciting. My pleasure. Happy to join. Always good to talk to you, Megan.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into the final rule for performance year 2025, I actually wanted to start off chatting with you a bit about our partnership with Patient 360. I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about Patient 360, how long you guys have been in business, and just what sets you apart from other quality reporting companies?
Absolutely. Well, I'll be dating myself a little bit when I tell you how long we've been around and how long I've been here. But yes, we've been a qualified registry since around about 2009, back when registries were first becoming registries and first crystallizing, out in the nebulous with CMS. And so we were one of the founding 16 registries, I want to say, back in 2009. So this is when it was PQRI, if anybody wants to go back into the alphabet soup, right? Before PQRS, there was PQRI. So this program has, as you know, evolved and morphed many, many, many times since 2009. And then around about 2014, I came on as COO. And again, the program had changed into and shifted and morphed in our alphabet soup, as you say, as we all say, into PQRS. And then around about 2017 is when QCDRs also came out into the world, so qualified clinical data registries, because CMS was looking for qualified registries that had measure development experience to begin developing specialty-specific measures. And so our QCDR status began around about 2016, 2017. And then shortly thereafter is when we developed our amazing partnership with MEDENT. I want to say around 2018 is when we started collaborating with MEDENT because it was determined all the data in the world is great, but it's a lot of heavy work for folks. And what we really want to do is make things easier, less burdensome. And the way to do that was to create an integrative platform, right? So that the data was integrating and that there was automation involved. And so that's kind of how we came on the scene with MEDENT. So it's sort of, we've evolved in stages, right? From an infant registry, back in 2009, just doing PQRI reporting with 16 other registries nationwide, side by side, right? Long history. Then morphed into, okay, we've got PQRS reporting, more registries started coming into the forefront around about 2014. And then around about 2017, when the program shifted from PQRS to MIPS, right? Everyone will remember that shift. That was around about 2017. That's also when we really gained our QCDR status as well. So we operate as both a QCDR and a qualified registry. And then shortly thereafter, we began our partnership with MEDENT to explore ways to make the program less burdensome for folks through automation and integration.
Yeah, and I mean, wow, it's been a wild ride. I mean, like you said, with the alphabet soup, the things are constantly changing. And actually, before we talk about the 2025 changes and what folks need to know, I'm curious, what exactly does it mean to say, you're a qualified registry? What kind of goes into that qualification process?
Oh, well, the qualified part of it is it's a series of policies, regulations, and rules that we have to follow and standards set forth by CMS. Right. So every year, the qualified registry and the QCDR must self-nominate with CMS. And of course, for folks that have been in the biz for a long time, we're renewing our current self-nomination, but there are still notifications from CMS of, okay, if this is changing, if that's changing, you have to let us know. So we move through a very heavy duty self-nomination process where we design and lay out all the key features of our qualified registry and QCDR. And then, of course, if we've developed new measures or harmonized measures with other measure stewards, right? For example, we have what's called an MSK measure set, musculoskeletal measures that we've co-stewarded with other partners. And we have to put those forth to CMS every year under rigor, right? They have to go through testing and validation. It's a very rigorous process to get those measures approved. That is also part of the self-nomination. And then each year, we have to update the measures that we've developed with our co-stewards. We have to test them again, validate again, provide all the performance analytics to CMS, submit that data, establish benchmarks, right? So there's a real measured development life cycle that happens over time for us QCDRs. It's quite rigorous. And then, of course, we have what's our standard, and again, this is all part of compliance for CMS. We have to conduct our internal audits as part of being a qualified registry in QCDR. And so I know some folks listening probably have been through an internal audit. And we really do tell folks, look, this is an internal audit. It's not a CMS audit, but we have to do it for compliance standards. And it actually really does help folks. I think at first when they read it, they're thinking, an audit. I mean, nobody really wants to be audited. But with us, because it's internal, we're really helping them understand how their data is appearing, how it's functioning. We're helping them detect and correct any potential errors that could be submitted to CMS before they're submitted to CMS so that there are no problems or issues. So really the auditing process, as frustrating as it can sometimes be to be selected for a random audit, it is part of the natural internal process. And we do use that to really help raise the standards for folks, to help them be compliant and to really detect and correct any errors beforehand. So that's part of what we're also doing to maintain our qualified registry and QCDR status, right? So it's a cycle, like any other CMS program, where you start off with your self-nomination, then you move through that process. And then once accepted, you begin accepting data. And then, of course, data submissions fall within a certain window, right? CMS has data submissions in January and February and early March, right? So data submissions are happening at that time. And then after data submissions, CMS then, after they've had us do our internal audits with our clients, CMS then audits us for compliance as qualified registries and QCDRs. So they come in and they review that we have all the correct business associate agreements in place, that we have all the correct consent agreements from all of our providers. They come in and basically check on and make sure we're following protocol. We're following everything that we said we were going to do in the self-nominations. They come in and look and see, okay, are you checking to see that you submitted all the denominator eligible instances and that the data that you submitted on behalf of all your clients met data completeness, right? So there's a series of checks and balances throughout the year. And then generally speaking, the summer is spent on development of our product, of our platform, of our interface to make, to make it better for folks, ease of use, right? So that they can engage with our platform every year. It gets better and better. And we increase the ease of use for our client population. So, and around and around we go. And then after the summer, once new developments have been made, we're back at self-nominations again. And there's the cycle.
Yeah, wow. I mean, geez, we were just talking about, what kind of coffee we drink, before we started recording here. And I can see why you certainly need your cup every day, Amanda. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's true though, you guys. I mean, I think that's one of the pleasures that we have working with you guys as partners is, we we appreciate that extra effort to ease of use, to making something that seems very, very complex user friendly, and something that is reliable. And I think that's why we've just really enjoyed our partnership with Patient 360. These last 5, 6, 7, however many years we've been partners now. It's been a while, but I guess let's kind of dive into 2025. So CMS recently released their final rule for the performance year 2025, and let's start with MIPS. I understand there aren't too many changes with MIPS this year, but I still want to hear what you have to say about it.
Not too many, actually. MIPS, I think, and we'll probably get into it, I think MVPs are going to start really taking off because they've been running concurrently for a while. But as far as MIPS are concerned, the data completeness threshold is the same. So it's that 75%. What that means is, generally speaking, MEDENT clients don't even need to worry about it because their data is coming over to us automatically via ECQMs and QRDA1 files on a nightly basis. There's no manual manipulation. It's just pushing over. I call it automatically. And so that meets 100% data completeness automatically anyway, right? So it organically is just doing what it's supposed to be doing. The 75% data completeness threshold is generally for folks that are still uploading their data manually and might be not necessarily having a machine-to-machine mechanism that's pushing the data over, but they're touching it in some way. And so CMS has a rule that says, look, if you're touching the data, you have to report on at least 75% of the numerator responses so that the data is consistent and fair and all of those good things. So that, generally speaking, that data completeness, MEDENT clients don't even have to worry about it because they're always at a 100% data completeness, which is great. But just for those folks that might be doing something manually, for whatever reason, and there can be many reasons why you might be loading a measure manually on your own, and it's perfectly fine to do that. But the data completeness threshold remains at 75%, and it doesn't look to be changing anytime soon, not this year or next year. So, and same thing with the points, right? So the total points to achieve to be at a neutral payment adjustment, right? Which means you're not going to get a bonus and you're not going to get anything negative. You're just going to keep on cruising along at neutrality. Because this is a budget neutral program as well. So you'll be cruising along at neutrality. It's 75 points, right, across all of the categories. One thing that I have been noting more often than what was typical in the past, and it's because it's changed over the last couple of years, is the cost category. And look, we tell folks this, but even if you repeat it a bunch of times, it takes a long time to sink in, right? These programmatic changes, we're eating, sleeping, and breathing these programmatic changes. This is all we do, right? So of course we're going to know. But I think for our client base, where we tell them often, I think usually after about year 2 or 3, it starts to sink in. But it's always a good, I'll take any opportunity I have to repeat it. The cost category is worth 30 points. And the cost category is not designated, it's not calculated by the qualified registries or the QCDRs. It is calculated by CMS after submissions. And I think this has just sort of started because cost category during COVID and during other years previously, it was worth less. It wasn't worth as many points. It wasn't worth 30 points. And then in COVID, there were a lot of automatic EUCs for it, right? So it was getting reweighted. So no one really knew it. The cost was kind of up in the nebulous of it's there, but we don't really have to worry about it as much. Now, because it's worth 30 points and because CMS calculates it, there aren't really any automatic re-rates for it anymore, anything like that. And it happens after submissions. What we have to educate folks on the regular, right, which we do during our calls and our seminars and our webinars, is when you're reporting with us in Patient360 and looking at your dashboard, you'll see that the best you can do going into submissions, when we go to submit your data to CMS, is 70 points total. So that's already 5 points less than a neutral score. But that, we have to remind folks, is because of the cost category. And typically, if you're going in with a solid 60 or 70 points into submissions, you'll need to get anywhere from 5 to 15 points out of 30 points in the cost category to pass your MIPS. And then people kind of get it and say, okay, whew, it puts their mind at ease. But these next couple of years, there's a little bit of uncertainty because a lot of folks haven't previously, I say, been graded. You haven't received a grade yet for your cost category, right? So this will be a first year for many folks to get their, I say, grade, right, in air quotes, on their cost category. Once you know in year 1, when you first get the points for the cost category, you can then use that information to anticipate and to, make a guesstimate of what you'll be getting in cost in the future. Because normally I don't see folks, let's say they get cost 20 points in, 2023. We normally don't see someone drop from 20 points in cost down to 11 unless something catastrophic has happened, right? So you can usually anticipate your cost score being within the vicinity of 5 points or so to what it was the previous year. So people can use their scores that they're going to get here in 2024 to help predict what they may be getting in 2025. So that's just something to keep in mind about the cost category and about overall. Again, there's no changes to the number of points you need to get to pass MIPS. It's 75 points. But the categories that you report on have changed in the last few years. And the biggest one that's changed is cost. And so that's what I like to let folks know, because they do get nervous. Oh my gosh, why does my cost category keep saying 0 on the P360 dashboard? Because cost is calculated by CMS after submissions in the summer. Then those points are applied, and then you get your final score from CMS. So that's just something important to keep in mind. They did revise the cost scoring methodology, so that's pretty cool, where again, I can't get into the wizardry because you'd need to look at a chart of all their algorithms and everything, but the way that they're calculating the algorithms for cost, it definitely assesses the clinician cost of care more appropriately. And there's a little bit more flexibility there. So I think folks that were nervous about cost before, this is a little bit better in the way that they're calculating it. Again, there's a lot of, I call it wizardry involved. And there's an entire booklet, if you will, in the QPP Resource Center about how cost is calculated. So if anybody, wants to do some fun Friday night reading, you can always pick up the manual on the cost category and learn more about that. Small practice reweights are still in place, so everybody out there that's 15 and under will be super stoked because, again, the automatic promoting interoperability reweight is there. Other reweights in special scenarios for small practices really help because the CMS understands, that the program, they're trying to lean it out, if you will, and create less burden. And so small practices is kind of where they start with that. And then, of course, there's going to be a removal of the 7-point cap for certain topped-out quality measures in some of the specialty measure sets. And you can, when you're reading through, there's a QPP fact sheet. Just let folks know, I always do, on the CMS website. It's way better than reading through, thousands of pages of statute. It's a fact sheet of about 60 pages, and it breaks down like which measures are where they're removing the 7-point cap and all that good stuff. And then same thing for improvement activities. For a while, folks are probably used to seeing, oh, well, we've got this one is weighted at this and that one's weighted at this, and how many do we pick? They're just kind of evening it all out, and it's just like, just pick this improvement activity or this improvement activity and you get this many points. They're not all different weights anymore, so for people to try to figure out. So really not too many massive changes for MIPS. This is exactly the same as everything was last year, but everything that I just mentioned about the cost category and all of these items that, it takes a while for people to have the aha moment on them. So even though this stuff it was the same in 2023 where the cost category was worth 30 points, where the 75 performance threshold existed, all of those things were still there last year in 2023. But I think, again, it takes a couple of 2 to 3 program periods, performance periods for everyone to have the aha moment and to understand it. So we're still receiving a lot of questions about the cost category, which we're happy to field because we totally understand that nobody else eats, sleeps, and breathes this, nor do they want to. And so having us kind of point out and delineate what are the things that you really need to be concerned with, we're happy to do that for folks. So that's kind of where we are with MIPS. Not a ton of changes, but I bet you want to ask about MVPs.
Yes, I was just going to say, so let's get into MVPs. You said that, you think some, more people might start to get interested in MVPs.
Yeah, here's the thing that I want to say about MVPs is that there hasn't been, honestly, Megan, much of an uptake, right? We've had, I want to say in 2023, we submitted maybe 5 or 6 TINs MVPs. In 2022, maybe 1 or 2. There hasn't been a huge, let's do the MVP. I think because people are used to doing MIPS, and because the automation is set up with MEDENT, they're just plug and play and they're on autopilot, which I totally get. What I think, though, is really important to keep in mind with MVPs is that nothing in the workflow for MEDENT clients or for anyone really needs to change if you wanted to submit concurrently. So I think a big takeaway that I want people to think about is you can report both programs concurrently, right? And CMS will take the better of the 2 scores. And furthermore, nothing changes in the workflow for MEDENT clients. So the data for all the measures is just quality measures is coming over nightly, right? All that changes is the Patient360 dashboard, because if a client indicates on our dashboard that they want to do both programs, then we just show both program score points and the allocations on our dashboard, right? One right under the other. So you can see, here's your score for MIPS, here's your score for MVPs, because all the measures are already coming over automatically, and we just plug those measures into the appropriate program. So there isn't really anything extra for anyone to do. So I'm kind of letting people know it's sort of a win-win. If an MVP has been developed in your specialty, may as well knock it out of the way now and submit it dually with MIPS, because eventually, even though they haven't said, like CMS hasn't said, hey, here's the actual date that we're going to sunset MIPS, they haven't said that. So these programs are going to run concurrently for quite some time. I suspect at least another 2 to 3 years, if not 4. But eventually, what they'll do is when MIPS is fully sunsetted, I think they're going to wait until there's a specialty MVP for every single specialty is represented, right? So they're going to have to do that before they sunset MIPS fully. But they're on their way, right? There's some kind of crazy inventory. I think it's like 21 or 25 or something like that MVPs that have been developed so far. There's a bunch of new ones. There's an ophthalmology one, a gastro one that they just came out with, a derm. I think a lot of derms are going to start to use the derm MVP, because the thing is, you only have to, in the MVP, there's only 4 quality measures that you have to report on, whereas in MIPS it's 6. So there's a little bit of burden reduction there as well. And if you're already reporting on 6 measures for MIPS and that data is already coming over to P360 anyway, there's no reason not to tick the box that you'll just plug the other 4 measures that you're already reporting into the MVP and submit that too, because it doesn't matter. CMS is going to take the better of the 2 scores. So really it's a complete win-win. So I would definitely suggest to folks, if you're thinking about it, there's nothing to lose and there's no extra work. So there's no reason not to. And then when they do fully sunset and retire MIPS, you'll already be reporting the MVP, and it'll feel like plug and play. Nothing's changed, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, it just kind of makes sense to do that, especially if there's really no change in the workflow.
Exactly.
So, let's talk a little bit about, what ACOs need to know with the shared savings program. I think that's where we're seeing, kind of a majority of the changes for 2025.
Indeed, yeah. So MSSP ACOs, we have a number of MEDENT TINs that we work with, and those TINs are a part of an MSSP ACO. And so what that means is, instead of reporting MIPS or MVPs, they have a special program. In previous years, in the last 3 years, it's been called APP reporting. Again, alphabet soup, right? And APP reporting has been a shift from what they're used to. It's what was previously called web interface, or GPRO, is now called APP reporting. And for 2024, they've now called it APP plus reporting, right? Because they're adding an additional quality measure. And so the shift for folks, what I think, MSSP ACO TIN members need to understand is that this is the first year. So 2025, they are completely sunsetting. So they're retiring it. You know how I just said, well, MIPS is going to be running concurrently for a long time. In this case, for this particular program, GPRO web interface is no longer running concurrently for 2025. So the last 3 years, they've been running GPRO web interface alongside with APP reporting, so that MSSP ACOs could get used to APP reporting, because it's a very different, it's on all payers rather than just being on a set of patients, of beneficiaries that CMS kind of sends a list for GPRO reporting. This is a completely different reporting collection type. Looks different, feels different, right? And so CMS ran it concurrently for a few years. And we had some early adopters. I want to say, well, let's see, 2022, we submitted for 2 ACOs. 2023, we submitted for 4 or 5. And now here in 2024, gosh, and the years bleed together in the MIPS world and in the quality payment program world, right? Like we're collecting data, and then we're submitting data in a different performance year, and then payment adjustments come out for a past performance year. So I'm constantly like in and out of 3 different years. But for the APP reporting, they essentially, their submission requirements are different. It's their shared savings are different. It's a whole different program structure. And so I want to say, here in 2024, we've got about 15 ACOs right now at the moment that we're going to be submitting for. So it's climbed exponentially in terms of early adoption, but still not, I mean, there's something like for MSSP ACOs, I think in the final rule, who was telling us, I think Tim Jackson said there's something like 500 or 600 MSSP ACOs, and maybe like in 2023, 76 or something of them reported using APP plus. So there's going to be, in 2025, think about it, right? And here in 2024, if there are only 76 out of some 500-600 MSSP ACOs that were early adopters, there's hundreds more that are now going to have to make the shift for 2025. They're going to have to find a solution because it is such a different program. And so they've got to report in 2025. It's, let me think. Measure 1, it's diabetes, hemoglobin A1C, 134 depression screening, 236 blood pressure, and then they've added 112, which is breast cancer screening. So those are sort of the 4 quality measures that are part of the APP plus quality measure set. And then they're going to have like a population health measure and a CAPS measure. And then every year, right, like 2026, 2027, they're going to keep adding on to those measure sets for folks to report. And so I think it's just, it's really important for MSSP ACOs to be aware, the 2 biggies, that there really isn't, right now, some of them are probably still submitting concurrently here in 2024 because GPRO reporting is still here right now at this moment in time in 2024. But starting January 1st, it just is no longer a collection type option. And so everyone's going to be scrambling. And again, our early adopters are really happy and stoked because they've been doing it, so they know what's going on. And they had the opportunity because a lot of them, they submitted with us the APP program, and they also concurrently submitted web interface. And during those performance periods, CMS was taking the better of 2 scores, just kind of like the MVPs and the MIPS. And so those folks are at an advantage because they've been doing both and easing into the program, getting their toes wet. And now when 2025 rolls around and web interface is gone completely, they've already been doing the APP reporting and they're feeling more confident in it because there are nuances, right? You have to have, we have a wonderful integration with MEDENT, which is fantastic. But when it comes to APP reporting, MSSP ACOs are comprised of multiple TINs. Not all TINs are on MEDENT, right? So you have other TINs on other EHRs, and that ACO is relying on every member TIN to send good quality data. And all of our MEDENT TINs are kind of rock stars at the moment because the data is coming over automatically for all those measures. So the ACOs love MEDENT TINs because we've already got an integration in place. But when there's other EHRs involved, the ACO they're working on collecting the data from those TINs as well. And so those are things to think about. If you're a member TIN of an ACO, to start talking to your leadership now, if you're hearing this and saying, hey, we're part of MEDENT, which is great. So our data is going to P360, but what are the other member TINs doing? And how is that going to impact our shared savings? That is something to think about, and people should be talking to their ACO leadership now. So those are some important things. Again, it's a totally different program, and in 2025, I think it's going to be a lot of organizations and MSSP ACOs are going to be zipping around trying to find a solution. And the solution is, the data has to be deduplicated and patient matching has to occur before submissions, right? Because this is a completely different program on Medicare beneficiaries. And so the qualified registry and QCDRs, those entities are the ones that are doing that heavy lifting, right? That are doing the patient matching and the deduping and submitting the data for all these MSSP ACOs. So I think there's going to be quite a big scramble in 2025 for folks because there's a certain number of QCDRs, right? And there's a high number of MSSP ACOs nationwide. And if we, again, think about those numbers, that only 676 or so of them have reported using APP, the other 300 to 400 are going to have to find a solution, a qualified QCDR. So there's going to be a little bit of a scramble, and we're here to help. So that's what we'll be working on with folks, and those are some of the changes for MSSP ACOs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I do want to mention, you were talking a little bit about how you've had some early adopters with the program who have been very successful with the APP reporting. And we actually have a webinar that MEDENT is going to sponsor for Patient360 coming up on December 10th. That's a Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. We actually are going to feature one of these early adopters and ask some questions about their experience with having adopted the program already and getting some success stories from an ACO that's been there and done it. And we will also have some Patient360 experts on as well to kind of discuss some tips and strategies for staying ahead. And so again, I just wanted to note that webinar. It's free. It's sponsored by MEDENT, and this will be on Tuesday, December 10th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern, and you can find that registration registration link on medent.com/news/webinars. And yeah, if you're interested and you're unsure of where to find that registration link, you can always, contact Patient 360 or MEDENT, and we can get you that information. And Amanda, is there anything else you wanted to say about that upcoming event?
Well, I'm looking forward to. I'll be there, so we'll be together again, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you again and helping folks, helping enlighten them for these new programs, because I know sometimes it can be overwhelming. And
Yeah.
look, we're here to help. We're here to demystify everything and just to point folks in the right direction and provide that support. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And as we come up on the holidays, there's certainly a lot of excitement around the holidays, but I imagine it's also kind of crunch time for you guys at Patient 360, because when that new year hits, you guys are all thinking about the reporting and getting everything settled. So it's certainly the time of year we want to talk about this.
Indeed. So I'm looking forward to it and looking forward to connecting with you again, Meg.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Amanda, for joining us today. And I hope everyone joins us for that webinar on the 10th.
Thanks a bunch. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Talk to you soon.